distingué.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Have a seat. We're going to talk a lot. Thank you. And this is the last Q&A of this year. So we're going to stay longer.
Yeah!
Carlitos and I are good friends, so we can chat. Yo aquí también.
Yeah!
So first of all, how many people have seen this one before? So these are fans.
I'm glad. And thank you for seeing it in the theater. You know, see it anywhere. And you can, of course, repeat it over and over on Netflix. So do feel free.
Guillermo, let's start with talking about when you first read the book. Is it safe to assume that you first read it in Spanish?
Yes. It was a paperback from Editorial Bruguera. I bicycled my way to an expat supermarket that was in Guadalajara called Maxi. And it was always, there was a rack. I used to buy my American magazines there and my Spanish paperbacks. And I bought that one and I read it, and the book was so amazing. I was 11. So, you know, I know this is going to sound like a joke, but I said, this is the best book I've ever read. But by 11, I was reading 2 books, 3 books a day. Because I'm super fast. I have very fast reading. I can read a page every 4 or 5 seconds and keep comprehension. And I really adored it. I had read my father's library by that age, at 11. So it felt like, you know, what happens with the myth, the original myth, and what I wanted is, I said, I am the creature. I am the creature, and the creature is me. The way Jacob Elordi said it on the first conversation we had is the best way I've heard. He says, this creature is more me than me. I thought that was so eloquent. And he's a very eloquent person, and this is the best way. I found religion. This is my religion. I've been a Frankenstein head my whole life. And I think nothing suits the need for parable or the understanding of the universe better than this story. You know, and she was 18, Mary Shelley, and her sensibility was, yeah, let's give it for Mary. And some people say, how could she write it so young? I said, that's the only time to write it. How could she write it any later when you compromise your beliefs, when you fuck up your life, when the world gets to you? At 18, you know exactly what you're angry at, and you're right. Those are the 2 things that are very salient to me. People say, oh, they're going through a difficult phase. No, they're going through the only phase where they're going to tell you to fuck off. And they're going to be right. So.
And so when you read it in English, did you find something else when you read it in the original in her voice? Was that different for you?
You know, I've read it now so many times, and I read it on her manuscript. I read the 1818 edition, the 1823, the 1831. I think that there is no substitute for the cadence of the original language. There is no substitute for the, you know, Mark Twain used to say the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lighting and the lighting bug. You know, it is really, the cadence of English is extremely different. And the cadence of English in the 1800s is very different. So there is no substitute. So you mentioned when Nabokov says he doesn't like the Quixote, I go, I hope you read it in Spanish, because otherwise we didn't read it.
So when you say that, you know, that at 18 was the best time for it to write it, can you imagine you making this when you're much younger, or did you have to wait?
Well, yeah, it would be a very different movie. First of all, in terms of ability and all that, but because this is a craft. People talk about vision and this as if an abstraction. It's basically you know, it's a craft. You hone your skills with woodworking,
right,
so to speak. You try to make the wood grain better, the direction of the wood to assemble and not glue, not use nails, meaning you technically get better at expressing the essential material is what you gain with age. And I think it's a very difficult craft. It needs to be invisible and at the same time visible, depending on the tone of the movie. So I wouldn't have done this movie, and I would have done it as a child, as the son of my father. This I did as a son and as a father. You know, the older you get, the more people you have to apologize to. So, you know, I think it's very important. It happened when it needed to happen. It happened in a time where we urgently need to apologize and understand the other, you know? Because we understand that the world is made of the most terrible and bad and most beautiful moments we'll ever have, you know? So there's no better time for this movie than now. And no better time to say this is what makes us human than now. And I sustain that what makes us human is imperfection. Imperfucking-faction. Not perfection. We don't need things to get more remote and more perfect. We need things to be accepted with the imprint of a human thumb.
And I'm sure that's part of how you approach your filmmaking, right? Are you a perfectionist when it comes to the craft, or do you accept the sort of the human touch that perhaps is not exactly
50-50, because, you know, the more you, making movies is like fishing. You have to pull and reel in and release. Pull and release. You know, and the release is towards reality. I'm 61 years old, and I learned that the movie talks through reality. So I hostage negotiate with reality all day long. I go, okay, the sun is over there and it's setting. Okay, let's do it from over here. Even if I thought for years to do it over here. That's you know, and sometimes you say, no, we come back tomorrow. So, you know, if nothing is important, it's a disaster. If everything is important, it's a disaster. You have to find the importance, which every gesture in a movie is important, but you have to, the importance of will. If everything has to be to your will, then you're not talking to the movie. You're not listening to the movie. So you learn to identify opportunity instead of an accident, or opportunity instead of an obstacle. And that is, so perfection is, I would say, what you look for is expressiveness and eloquence. Art has to be eloquent above everything else. I think perfection is relative. What's perfect to you, even if you're creating it, may not move someone. And I think the main point of art is emotion. And I think that we are in a moment very critical in which we are ashamed of emotion, you know, or being who we are without having to prove the world wrong. You know, I think being right doesn't mean everybody else is wrong. It means that the way I said it in the movie is the most eloquent way I can say it, which is, to you I am obscene, but to myself I only am. I simply am. That's the possibility of peace.
And so when you're adapting the text, are you trying not to be too reverential, make it your own? What is the process when you live with this text so long?
Well, I've lived with it so long, I repeat this now and then, but I have written the introduction to several editions of the novel. I really got to submerge myself in the romantics and the movement. I read the biography of Mary Wollstonecraft. Well, I read the biography of William Goodwin, of Percy Shelley, of everybody involved in that moment, the painters, you know, both Spain like Goya or Caspar David Friedrich, you name it. You know, I tried to immerse myself, and the movie is sort of what the combination of her biography, my biography, everything I know about the Romantic movement, everybody that was present at the time, you know, Shelley, Percy, with Ozymandias or Byron at the end, etc., etc. It's a declaration of love for the spirit of the Romantics. The Romantics, when you hear that word, people think, oh, languid people swooning. The Romantics were motherfuckers. They were Sid and Nancy. Mary and Percy were Sid and Nancy. I mean, Percy comes running up the stairs when they were forbidden to be lovers because he was married. He rushes up the stairs with a bottle of laudanum and a gun and says to Mary, drink it, die, and I'll blow my brains, and we'll go together. That's not Fabio. Fabio, that's not the cover of a Barbara Cartland novel. That is hardcore. And they escaped at 5 a.m. from her parents' house, dressed completely in black so they cannot be detected, and they cross the English Channel, escaping from her stepmother. They go broke many times. Percy has to mortgage his future earnings many times to pay for their way through Europe. These are people that live day to day, but also for a very modern idea of what free love was, very modern idea of what possessing was. They were very, very much on the edge of the good society, and they were very confrontational. So the movie tries to recuperate that. I mean, when you think about somebody like Keats, Keats says, truth is beauty and beauty is truth. What a simple, brutal way to define their mission in life, to provoke an emotion, to provoke the ecstasy of something beautiful. That's art. When we talk about the poets, the romantic poets, the quote at the end comes from a ballad of Childe Harold, in the canto where Childe Harold is exposed to Waterloo, the battlefield, and Lord Byron rode in that battlefield. Most of the 4 or 5 poets rode the battlefield right after it happened. This is not a languid call. These are guys that they were rock stars. They were demigods. It's very important to understand that, to understand the spirit of the movie, which is fearless. I am Mexican. I don't care about what I think. A huevo. Can I be too much? Fuck yeah. At this point, I've been doing this 30 years. You know what kind of fruit I give. You want a fucking orange, go across the street. I give pears.
Also, you have to have lived through some stuff to make a movie like this, to write a story like this, right? It comes from lived experience.
Yeah. No, I've gone through a lot of difficult things, and I still see the radical position of optimism or grace or love is not to believe in it from an ignorant point of view. When you know the world is fucked up and you believe in love and you believe in hope and you believe in grace, then that's a radical position. You know what I'm saying? Because you can choose to do so. You can choose to do so in the face of the world being like that. So, to answer the question before this question, I don't want to do taxidermy with a classic. I don't want you to see a classic. I want you to see the modern Prometheus. I want you to see something that is alive, that makes you feel the way that made you feel 200 years ago, or in 1931 when Boris Karloff turned around the first time. I want it to be alive for the audience. I don't want to do an act of reverence. I want to make an act of love.
Now that you mentioned the 1931 film, it's so different to yours, but I know that you love it. You love the scene with the girl on the flowers towards the end of that movie. Why is that version of Frankenstein something that you cherish so much?
Well, 1931 for me was the gospel, but in terms of being the novel, you can open a huge parenthesis because, in 1823, when the first play of Frankenstein is in vogue, they start changing things. They include the assistant for the first time. Then the whale movie is based on a 1927 play that is acquired because Dracula had been successful and was acquired from a Hamilton Dean play. And the 1927 play has the abnormal brain, which is of course nowhere to be found in the novel, or the Fritz, the assistant, which is of course never to be found in the novel. And it takes a lot of liberties with the text, but it contains the essence of the creature in a way that exists, in my opinion, largely by Whale being sort of a man that existed on a very iconoclastic way. He was a very rebellious artist, and because Boris Karloff was a sea of compassion. Boris Karloff played the creature in a way that was saintly, but at the same time under-equipped for the world. And the novel is about taking that creature from childhood, from nothing to a human being. That journey is what fascinated me in the novel, and I think that we have detailed it with equal zeal. So the 31 is very salient for me because Whale is a great director. When you see his Waterloo Bridge or Old Dark House or Showboat, any of his movies, he's a great director. He's fearless, and Boris is incredibly compassionate. So Boris to me is was always a Jesus figure for me. It was I used to say that I understood resurrection of the flesh, immaculate conception, and stigmata through Frankenstein. I was raised very, 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 very Catholic. My grandma was like Carrie's mom. And I was raised with that, and I found that the only saint, the only holy figure that forgave the sin of imperfection was monsters. And I found that to be so liberating to me, that you didn't have the stringent model of male or female movie stars, or the idea of perfection. Monsters allowed you to be imperfect, and that's the 1931 movie. I felt it was a blessing that came straight from me. Now, when a movie speaks to you, and that's why we go to the theater. When a movie speaks to you, it's like going to church. You say, this was done just for me. And you know what? It was. When you're moved by a film, you experience in the same way that you experience a great song. And you say, Harry Nilsson is talking about me. Paul McCartney is talking about me, or Pink Floyd, or whatever. I mean, whatever you crazy kids are listening to. But that's art. That's art. And that's why you say fuck AI, by the way. I'm sure that it's evident to people that when something touches is communication from soul to soul. And the purest form of art, in a strange way, is music. So the aspiration of a movie is to feel like a piece of music, like a song. And that's when it speaks to you, and only you.
I mean, you talked about your connection to the creature. So what were your thoughts throughout the years about Victor himself and his quest and his arrogance, perhaps, to play cops?
I always have to write the characters from me, meaning I understand the creature. I am also, in a bad day, I'm Victor. Of course you can be. You should allow yourself to be fucked up. You should. If you don't, you're never going to exhale. You're going to be holding your breath your whole life. I think that, we should not fear ridicule, imperfection, being made fun of, nothing. I mean, we have to exist. That's the most urgent thing we have in the world right now. Can we exist? And the only way you're going to find it is not in the black and white notion of the world. The world is polychrome. We need every fucking color to exist for the world to exist. Why do we have to condemn, praise? The two most violent acts in this world is to put someone in a pedestal or try to throw them in a cellar. No one is a fucking saint, and no one is completely inhuman. So, I think that to me that's the range. And so the creature, Victor, Elizabeth. If I don't eat carbs, I aspire to be Elizabeth. Maybe I'll be a size 25 one day. Right now it's 50. So. But Elizabeth is Mary Shelley for me. And I was Mary Shelley as a kid. I said everybody had a crush on Farrah Fawcett. I had a crush on the Brontes. I was like, is Charlotte home? Not like, hello, sir. And Charlotte come out. Is their spirit was my spirit. I was not an adequate boy for my father. I was surprisingly weird. My dad was pretty much a car salesman and a real estate guy, And he was so worried about me. He was so worried about me that before I married my childhood sweetheart, he said, you have to find a decent job. This movie thing is not going to work.
He was not right.
Well, but it could have been. Yeah. So I went with him on real estate for 5 years, and he taught me whatever, this and that. But I felt inadequate. You know, I was a boy that didn't want to be in the sun. I would much rather be with a book than playing football. I was very silent, very super shy. Blah, blah, blah. So I am Elizabeth. And Mary was didn't feel comfortable as a daughter, I don't think, or and inherited from her mother the desire to right the wrongs of the female role in society, which, you know, so you write those characters from every point of view, and you have to be able to be a less than perfect guy and fuck up and be, you know, be not a good guy at 8:30 and then be a saint at 10:30 and then be at 11:30 you're a good dad and 2:30 you're the worst brother that ever lived, and you know, you can mix it. You can make a little bit of that, and with characters I have to understand Victor. I have to understand him. Plus he's Oscar Isaac. What the fuck?
Right.
I'll take all the imperfections if I can look like Oscar Isaac. I'll be really imperfect with that.
So how did Oscar Isaac come into your mind? Did you always think of when you were writing?
No, I was thinking, we took a general meeting, and he came home, and we ordered Cuban food. Yeah. With puerco.
Yeah.
From Versailles. And we were eating and talking, and we started talking about our fathers, and we started talking about being fathers, and we started talking about the unique brand of fatherhood that comes in a Latin American family. You know, with the father in a Latin American household is God. The same way that the mother is la chancla. The most deadly weapon ever invented.
The punishing, you know, stroke of God.
But it is, the institutions are much larger in my imagination there. And we talked about it, and at the end I said, you know what, you should be Victor. I'm writing Frankenstein. And I wanted it to be a Latin Victor, because the Gothic romance, traditionally, not the romance, but the Gothic romance, was enamored of the swarthy countries of Europe. Anne Radcliffe, who wrote some of the most successful Gothic romances, was always placed in Italy. There's, in fact, her novel, The Italian. The Castle of Otranto, which starts a Gothic romance, happens in Otranto, in Italy. The Monk, Matthew G. Lewis, one of the most famous, amazing, crazy Gothic romances, is written for Madrid. So I said, if the English were trying to be Latin, I'm going to fulfill their dream. We're going to go for, because Lord Byron, who is one of the greatest lyrical poets I've ever read, you know, if you, Elizabeth coming down the stairs, read the poet, she walks like the night, I think is the translation I remember in English, and the creature lost in the woods is the pathless woods. Lord Byron was very passionate and looked for emotion.
And with the creature, you know, for the look of him, I understand you didn't want any scars. You wanted it to be beautiful in a very unique way. Are you taking only from the novel, or are you taking from your imagination of what this creature is?
If you look at Kronos, look at Blade 2, you look at, I've tried the type of sort of lines in the makeup and the alabaster body a few times, but never with a genius. It's Mike Hill. He's a genius, you know?
Yeah.
And the idea for me is that there needed to be scars, but they didn't need to be emergency room scars. It didn't need to look like a patch-up. It needed to look like a newly minted soul. And what I always looked for was the idea in the Japanese notion of beauty, wabi-sabi. There's a discipline called kintsugi. And the kintsugi is the broken porcelain repaired with streaks of gold. And then they say the object is more precious and more yours because it's broken and glued back together, right? It becomes you and the object become one story. and it's beauty, finding beauty in imperfection. And I thought, first of all, that's what we all are, right? Our beauty comes from those scars. Storytellers are that. The gold is the stories. And finally, the creature was going to evoke that broken portion and put together again, you know? And that would give him dignity and beauty. But then Mike, we started echoing the scar of the archangel in Victor's room. Mike came up with an idea of evoking the lightning bolts on the direction of the scars to do the composition so you're always looking at the eyes of Jacob. It was the most expressive eyes in the history of cinema for me, one of the top 10 best eyes. And I mean, look, the scene at the end, he has one fucking eye exposed. And he makes you feel. I mean, that is like right up there, rarefied air. And so the design tries the head to evoke the phrenology manuals from the 1800s, and the body tries to evoke sort of lines that are less anatomical and more designy. So when you see it, it's absolutely, I mean, in the novel, Victor says, I'm going to construct something more than human, superior to human. You know, he's not looking just for immortality, he's looking for redesigning that. And in the novel, there's a back and forth where he says, I selected the parts for their beauty. And then he says, what was I thinking? The skin barely covered the tendons and the muscles. Blah, blah, blah. But I said, why not fulfill it? Why not make the creature? Because then the innocence hurts much more. Because the one thing I don't understand is how can somebody be violent to a child? I don't understand it. It's incomprehensible. And if he can embody that, and Jacob miraculously embodied that, you know, and me, I embodied compassion, and Oscar embodied imperfection. So these people talk about one performance. These are yin, yang, yang. You know, it's like the three characters form the soul of a human. You know, is a creature that gets one word and it means the world to him. Victor. That's it. He doesn't need anything else. The road, Victor. The sun, Victor. That's what you are when you're a kid. Your parents are the universe. And then that universe turns violent. You're forever cracked. You can be repaired, but you're cracked forever. So that's what makes that journey universal.
I feel like some people here might have seen the amazing documentary of the making of the film on Netflix. I'm still pretty baffled by the ship and its existence in the physical world. That's one of the things I love about your work, the tangible nature of things. Was there any pushback about building an actual ship for this?
Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for everybody that works with me, I'm also a producer. So what I think is I'm really good at saying, this is gravy, these are meatballs. And I say, and one of the things I do, if you watch my movies, Shape of Water was $19.3 million. And I knew that in the first 10 minutes, I needed to deploy 3-4 big gestures. So you think I had money. You know, so underwater room, government lab, period set piece, big engine room, big lab, big, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest of the movie is lab, apartment, lab, apartment, lab, apartment. That's it. So it's a small movie, but you don't see it like that because as a producer, I make those decisions. And I said, the ship is going to be physical, and every set is going to be physical because I want this to be an opera. I want people to look at it as something larger than human. The tone of it is going to be opera. Like when you go and you see, you know, Aida, you don't want 2 elephants, you want 20 elephants. You want the you know, so it's not that the movie ended up 600,000 under budget from the original budget. So, and that is being Mexican, by the way. Because you know, we get the job done, man. We get the job done.
No se puede.
We go to our budget, man. But it's very important that people, I think people can tell when it's art and when it's handmade. and be moved by that. You know, I think we can. We know it's real. We know somebody, hundreds of people embroidered that dress or printed that fabric or built that ship. And then if the act of a movie like Kids is to be truthful and beautiful, then it's not extravagant. You're doing it for a meaningful gesture. You're saying, this is what we're doing, and we're doing it for real. So every time you see that ship, is the real ship. Every time he moves it with all the sailors on top. We gimbaled that ship. We made it happen. And I think those are things that make movies feel like they used to make them, quote unquote. You know, where you went to the theater to be transported.
Talk about the relationship between this movie and Pinocchio, which are so beautiful together. I don't know if I could handle watching them back to back. The emotion at the end is just so powerful. The endings are virtually identical. Were you always thinking of them as a pair?
Yeah, when I did Kronos and this one has so many parallels. Again, immortality, the protagonist at the end, along with the son, the look, the idea of love, an imperfect family, blah, blah, blah. Pinocchio and this were always two sides of the same tale. And when I met with Ted Sarandos years ago, we had done Troll Hunters, the trilogy of series that were developed for them through DreamWorks. And he knew I was a hard worker and that I got involved with every decision, that I was not a guy that said, yeah, somebody else is doing it. We plotted it, but we deal with every episode, the animatics. He saw that, and he said, why don't you come to Netflix and tell me what your bucket list is? I said, Pinocchio and Frankenstein, because nobody wanted to make them through decades. And he said, done. Pinocchio, I've been trying to do it in so many ways for about 20 years. And in the room with the art, no screenplay yet, because the screenplay that existed was a screenplay Chris Grimley developed, which was very faithful to the novel. And I said, no, I want to do this. And he saw the art and he said, done. And we didn't go further than like that. So to me, they were a piece. They are both, but they tried to do something different than the book and capture the spirit of the book. You know, we can talk about Collodi. Collodi was worried about the unification of Italy. That was one of the purposes of the book. It was to unify Italy through a single language, because Italy was several kingdoms before, right? With their idioms and all that. And Collodi was interested in the well-behaved child, blah, blah, blah. And the traditional idea on Pinocchio is he has to learn to obey to become a real boy. And I say, fuck that. You know, disobeying is the most human act we can do. Obedience is not the seat of the soul. The seat of the soul is two things, choice and disobedience. That's it. That's how we are human, you know? And I said, what if we set it in a context where everybody obeys except the puppet? And what if he never becomes a real boy, but he becomes a real human? And what if the one that needs to learn to be a father is Geppetto? So that is very linked to Victor and the creature. But the endings are completely different. Pinocchio goes away into the sun, saying he became mortal. He said to death, I want to go back and rescue my papa. And he became mortal. He says, did he die? Sure, we all will, blah, blah, blah. And he goes away. And he says, what happens, happens, and then we're gone, right? The creature is reactive for most of the movie. If you love it, he will love you back. If you hate him, he will hate you back. And at the end, he loves those that hated him and moves the ship. And he's alone at peace with the sun. So he knows he's not going to die. And he knows that for the moment he's alone. And it's different, but they illuminate each other.
In this notion of immortality, you know, many artists perhaps do their work to seek that sort of immortality through the art, through the work. Do you think about it that way, or do you not care what happens after?
I don't. I mean, they asked Alfred Hitchcock, are you worried about posterity? And he said, what has it done for me lately? You know, I mean, I think that it's a blessing that we're here for a certain amount of time, and then we go. Because if we are wise at all, we understand that we're not important. We're important while we last, and then you should pave the way for somebody that comes behind you. Immortality is the same as greed. It has no measure against the measure of the world. Why? When do you have enough? That's being rich. Being rich is saying, I have enough. Being unable to say that, it's not being rich. It's being an asshole. You know, and saying, I have enough years to be a person and maybe form bonds with friends and lovers and family, whatever is needed, that's enough. You know, 60 years, fuck, 80 years, fuck, that's a lot. That's a cherry on the cake. But to want more is the same as one more with money. It's not measurable. I don't want to be at 90. Fuck that. I don't want to be 100. No, please. If you see that 95, somebody shoot me, please. I don't want to be so wise that I know the world has no solution. I don't want to be old enough so my knees give up on me. I want to. If I could have a superpower, I would be a button that I could press and go, hold on, suckers, you know, without going to hell.
I think we need to wrap, but I wanted to ask you if, finally seeing Frankenstein in the world, did it give you some relief? Are you sort of fulfilled that it's out there now?
I tell you what, it's crazy because it started with the most gigantic postpartum depression I've ever felt, and something changed in me in an incredibly deep way during the shoot of the scene where he's putting together the bodies. Something monumental moved in my soul. I don't know what it is, but I'm a different person. So it's the only movie, well, no, one of the 3 movies that have actually changed me as a human being. Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water did that too, you know? The thing is, you know what is great is this. We have had 2 billion engagements through the platform, and we had hundreds and hundreds of sold-out shows, and measurably, people are coming to the movie 2, 3, 4 times more to repeat it, to see the fan art. I mean, I'm like a teenager. I post every fucking art I know about. You know why? Because the only thing that is measurable is love. And it's measurable just through acts of love. And I really, that is fantastic. It would have been, I must say, it would have been very moving if it happened to 100 people or 100 million people. It's, Crimson Peak took 10 years to find its audience. But it found it molecularly, But this is the first time it's happened to me at this volume, with this depth, and movies have saved my life many times. The art has done that for me. I hear a song and I go, yeah, I'm gonna stay a bit longer. It's worth it. And all of a sudden I see the world a little different. And if this movie does that for some people, there's no greater joy than this. To see you guys, when it's available, come to a theater to experience it this size, and to experience it with each other. That's the thing. Is the size of the screen, the size of the ideas, but the vivid nature of being together with people that love the same thing that you love. That is measurable. It can be at home with 4 people in the sofa, or it can be this gigantic sofa that IMAX has built for everyone. But to experience it with others, what a joy. And I'm telling you, happy holidays. Thank you from the bottom of my greasy heart. I love you. Thank you, Carlitos. Have a great time. Have a great Sunday, guys. Thank you.